I would have much more respect for Pritzker if he'd call me up and say, I have a problem. Can you help me fix it? I would be so happy to do it. I don't love, not that I don't have the right to do anything I want to do. I'm the president of the United States. If I think our country's in danger, and it is in danger in these cities, I can do it. No problem going in and solving, his difficulties. But it would be nice if they'd call and they'd say, would you do it?
Welcome back to Posting Through It. I'm Michael Edison Hayden.
I'm Jared Holt.
And today we're talking about the occupation of Washington, D.C., which is a very big issue for the people who live there, but it should be a big issue for everyone in the country. And there are hints that this could be a problem for cities like Chicago and New York in the coming weeks. We've already seen an occupation of Los Angeles in counter to the demonstrations against ICE. So this is a big one, and we have Marisa Kabas here to talk about it.
But before we get there, we got to give a shout out to our newest Patreon subscribers at the executive and platinum level. Just a reminder, this week starts the flow of bonus content, baby. So you're getting a double dose of Posting Through It on the feeds. One of those episodes, your Monday episode, is going to be public. A Thursday episode is going to be for our supporters on Patreon. A link to that is down in the description. So, in the Executive Club, new members this week include Graham Wilson and Mitch. In the Platinum Club this week, we've got Jamie Cohen, Milo, Robert Downen, and Ellen Loveledge. Thanks so much for supporting the show, guys. It means so much to us.
Yeah, and before we bring on Marisa, let's take it back to August 11th, 2025, which happened to be the anniversary of the Tiki Torch event white nationalists held in Charlottesville. For more on why these events might be related, please go back to episode 30, Did the Alt-Right Win?, that we conducted with Hannah Gase. But at a White House press conference, Donald Trump, reeling from the backlash to his associations with pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, declared a public safety emergency in D.C., invoking Section 740 of the D.C. Home Rule Act to place the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under federal control. He deployed the National Guard to the city. Trump called it Liberation Day. He emphasized a return to law and order.
Now, according to the lore that's out there, and take it with a grain of salt, perhaps, Trump kind of came up with this idea after seeing unhoused people from the motorcade on his way to a golf course. But things took more urgency after a group approached Edward Big Balls Korestein, who is part of the government now, somebody with the name Big Balls, and a woman he was with, identified as his significant other, in their car on Swan Street in the Logan Circle neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Big Balls, if you recall, had been the star of Elon Musk's very young Doge team tasked with gutting the federal government. Big Balls has a bunch of weird associations online. There was a big outrage over the fact that he was working with the government at all, let alone in the position that he was in. And the Trump administration kind of rallied to his defense. It's like the libs got mad, so the conservatives got defensive, or they got protective, right? So allegedly, a group of teenagers attempted to carjack Big Balls. Again, allegedly. This is their version of events. According, looking at police reports and some reporting that came out later, seems to be some reason to doubt it went down exactly this way. But again, allegedly, they left Big Balls beaten and bloodied. Picture of him looking roughed up, floated around the internet, drawing mockery from his haters. But this seems to be the impetus of why Trump deployed the military, or I guess called in the military to DC. It's like this idea, it seems, had been kind of floating around for a little bit, but then they came for Big Balls and something had to be done.
Yeah, of course, something had to be done because of big balls. So in mid-August, the National Guard shows up. Hundreds, nearly 1,000 troops line the streets by some accounts. And he brought in troops from other states, West Virginia, South Carolina, Ohio. Our government later gave these guys weapons, and the operation became more entrenched.
DC residents have not been happy about this. As the federal presence unfolded in their city, there were protests. There is a now kind of infamous clip of a guy throwing a hoagie, a grinder, a sub, whatever you call it in your region, a sandwich into the chest of a federal officer. I enjoyed that clip quite a bit. It's just like slapstick, classic, like sitcom comedy bit. Here's regular posting through it guest Hannah Gaze getting into it with one of the guys on the street who she caught filming her. You can't see it in this audio, but it's a very strange clip, right? It's like people are confronting these federal officers, and one of them pretends to be taking a selfie, but he's recording Hannah in this clip.
Hey, ma'am, why were you filming me?
Good evening, how are you?
Why were you filming me?
How are you doing today?
I'm good, how are you? Why were you taking a fake selfie?
I wouldn't take fake selfie.
Oh, I just have you on film right now taking a fake selfie.
Why are you filming me?
Because you're in my city.
Okay, so I was filming you because you're in my city.
Oh, really? You live here?
Maybe I do.
Mayor Muriel Bowser called this federal occupation unsettling and unprecedented and labeled it an authoritarian push. But just recently, she seems to have changed her tone on it. She's kind of painting it as a good thing, seemingly handing the Trump administration a rhetorical victory.
And we greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city.
DC Attorney General Brian Schwab also filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, arguing the federal seizure of the MPD and appointment of a federal emergency police commissioner exceeded legal authority under the Home Rule Act. He is seeking a restraining order to limit the federal presence in the city.
So the impact on all of this has been debated. How effective has it actually been on crime? But some analysis shows legitimately a decrease in violent crime under this new authoritarian structure. But it's also led to other things. Drinking and dining in Washington, D.C. has sharply declined across the city. Bars that cater to the queer community have seen a sharp drop. Business owners have described being hit with thousands of dollars in losses. People aren't committing as many crimes, but they're also not going outside as much. People with means are leaving the city to visit friends or family because they don't like the vibe anymore. The occupation is supposed to last until the end of the month, but there are intimations that it may last longer. The issue of tackling crime in this racialized way has been very popular with pro-Trump influencers who have been calling for action exactly like this.
Trump is apparently thinking about taking this show on the road. He set his sights on my beloved home, Chicago, specifically, promising that he's going to straighten out this bad city. He claims supporters, including, quote, African-American ladies, are pleading for him to intervene. After Chicago, he may target New York City. Feels like a situation that could go hellishly wrong, to put it mildly. And that's why we brought on today's guest, Marisa Kabas. She's an independent writer and reporter who publishes the Handbasket newsletter. Marisa has been reporting on this authoritarian takeover of DC since it started and is here to share some insights on exactly how we got here and what might be coming next.
I mean, we're so excited to have you on. You're just done so much reporting, like a human newsroom. I guess, let's start at the beginning here. Just kind of how did we get here? Why Washington, D.C.?
Well, thanks so much for having me. How did we get here? Well, that's quite a complex question that could take a while to answer. But the short answer is that Donald Trump, the president, lives in Washington, D.C. And so it is, aside from West Palm Beach, Florida, the city that he sees the most often. And he was on his way to a golf game somewhat recently and noticed that there were a lot of unhoused people on the streets of DC. And that was unacceptable to his eye. And so he decided to declare a crime emergency instead of, providing housing or food or anything else that could solve that problem. And it's quickly escalated into just the complete military occupation of the nation's capital.
So this has been in the headlines a lot. What we're seeing in DC is kind of a mix of, you have the National Guard coming in, and then this whole bevy of federal agents. I've seen so many photos of people kitted up in tactical gear or tactical dress, wandering around the National Mall, wandering around neighborhoods in Northwest and the close Northeast side of DC. What is it actually looking like on the ground there?
I haven't been there myself, so I can only say based on the many videos and photos that have been shared directly with me. But it looks like a mixture of military occupation and then also boredom at the same time, because there's a lot of, especially National Guards members, that have nothing to do. There was a photo the other day of them picking up trash. And, who knows why they were doing that. Maybe that was to make them look less scary to the community. But regardless, it doesn't seem like there's actually a lot of work for them to do. And because so many people are scared to be out and about right now because of their presence, there's even fewer people than usual to patrol and to intimidate if they so choose to. And so it's just like a lot of hanging out. Obviously the sandwich guy is infamous now, but like there was a picture of guardsmen hanging out in front of a Krispy Kreme, and someone was like, "Oh, they just want that thrown at them instead." So,
Sometimes life imitates art.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you tell as far as the apparent plan here? I feel like that's something I've heard a lot. Basically, DC has been inundated with National Guard troops, with an influx of federal agents, and the exact plan for what they're supposed to be doing isn't totally clear. I've heard that a lot. Is that true, or what's your sense of it?
Yeah, I don't think there's a clear plan. As with most Trump things, it's sort of slapdash and just making it up as he goes. I know from members of the DC National Guard that they're getting their orders very haphazardly. They're not coming through the normal channels. They're coming through text messages. And they got an alert that they were being deployed via text message, like via a mass alert. And that's just not, as I understand it, normally how things are done. So I don't think that there's a real plan. They are now arming the members of the National Guard, which is not something they were doing at the beginning. And as I reported, they are armed with these M17 pistols, and no one could quite figure out why exactly those weapons. And there may not be a particularly good reason. It may just be like that's what's available in the armory. But it's a lot of improv, I would say.
In this whole "there's no plan" part of it, that sounds like there's also no end date, right? And that's what I think is probably most concerning to DC residents and also to residents of other cities. We'll get into that in a bit because this seems like it's a sort of, something that's spreading around the country. But if there's no end date, that makes me, I don't know, this is not a question, more of a statement to respond to, but that makes me pretty concerned considering Trump's other authoritarian tendencies, right?
Yeah, well, it's supposed to end September 30th. That's technically the end of this. It's not a deployment because it's domestic, but this assignment. And Mayor Bowser, the DC mayor, made a comment the other day that she's talking with Trump about extending it because she's supportive of what these troops and federal agents are doing there. So there is technically an end date, but it's not at all like a hard stop. And even if they don't technically renew it, what's going to stop them from just hanging out longer? I mean, nothing.
DC is kind of unique. It is not a state. It is, a big city. It is a district. It is kind of in this weird zone, right? Where people who live in DC don't have any representation in the federal government. They don't really have much say. The city's government is kind of subject to the whims of Congress and that sort of thing. What about DC should people understand in terms of how it is unique and how it is set up in a different way that makes, deploying, or I guess not deploying, but, installing military and federal agents and stuff easier for Trump, or like, what about the dynamics changes just based on the geography of where this is happening right now?
Well, it's a federal district. So there are so many different levels of law enforcement within a very small relative area. So you have the Metropolitan Police, but then you also have the presence of every other federal agency because they're based there and they, that's where most of them operate out of. So the fact that it's all kind of physically concentrated, I think, helps ease the speed and the the amount in which that they were able to populate the streets with soldiers. But then on the other hand, it's just a regular city. It's a real city where real people live and work and go to school, and it's not just Capitol Hill. It's not just the monuments. It's a thriving, very diverse city. I believe it has one of the largest Black populations in the country for a city. Not quite half, but I think over 40%. And there's a lot of racial dynamics at play. There's a lot of segregated housing. It's a complicated city, and I think that Trump is exploiting those complications, and he's trying to cater to a certain type of person and trying to convince them that they are not safe where they live, when the truth is that, is it perfect? No, obviously not. But in a city of that many people, you're going to have things happen. And he's trying to create an image of DC that is just simply not real.
One thing that really struck me at the beginning of this was that you'd have videos of Black people in their own neighborhoods, right? And somebody would be smoking weed somewhere on the street. And, you have a group of like 5-6 guys in, what do you think what is the psychological impact of something like that? That to me makes it so surprising to see, Mayor Bowser kind of apologize for Trump, because it does seem like it's because of the large percentage of Black people in the city, as you pointed out. It seems like it's very, pointed at the Black community.
I think so. At the same time, the Black communities, the majority Black communities, are the ones who are most used to having a law enforcement presence around. So seeing cops kind of roaming the streets or giving them problems or stopping them is actually probably not as jarring to them as it is to like the mostly white people in DC. I mean, I've seen a bunch of videos from these neighborhoods, and like in one of them, the people who were watching these federal agents kind of like looking in cars were like making fun of them. They were laughing at them. They didn't really seem that scared of them because, and a lot of these people were like younger. Some of them were like teenagers. And I think they just are used to being over policed and having their actions watched. And so I'm sure it's uncomfortable and it makes them feel even less safe, but authority was never their friend to begin with.
So Trump and his administration cronies are talking about expanding this, as we've mentioned earlier. They're talking about places like New York, Sweet Home Chicago. For me, I worry how that will go down because I don't feel like this is a city. It's the Chicago way is hating the government. Even people you vote for, the city rallies around their next mayor. The mayor gets like a month in office and then everybody hates him. Just blanket. They're also talking about Boston. We saw kind of a precursor to this stuff in LA. Do you have any thoughts about sort of how they are selecting these places, or, we can realistically expect in terms of their ability to expand this project, expand this show of force. As we mentioned, DC is a federal district, so it has kind of a different code, and it's maybe a bit easier to orchestrate something like this there. Whereas in states, you need some buy-in from the state governments and that sort of thing. How realistic is it that Trump might order similar shows of force in other places around the country? I mean, certainly there's some more obstacles, but I also don't know that this administration has really shown itself to be too respectful of the precious norms and
Of
rules.
course. Yeah, I think it depends on a lot of things. I think it depends on the order in which he tries to go to the cities. So, for example, I think if he tried to do Chicago first, which seems like, he's set his sights on Chicago, Governor Pritzker has shown a real backbone and shown that he will not take this lying down, which is setting an incredible example for other states to follow. Because, for example, if they came to New York first, I can't really imagine Governor Hochul being like, over my dead body, will you come in? Like, she'll probably like post a few things about like how this is terrible and, un-American. But so I think if he goes for Chicago first, it would actually be a huge mistake because there will be an enormous opposition. And I think the fact that he hasn't done it yet has shown that there are obstacles, because if it was really as easy as what he did in DC, we would already be seeing troops on the ground in Chicago. And I think that he's selecting obviously cities in blue states. I mean, it's like really not that deep. He hates Democrats. He hates states that didn't vote for him. And he is trying to punish us.
My going paranoid fear is that he's going to they're just going to arrest Mamdani. That's going to be like the New York mission. He's just going to arrest Mamdani and try to deport him somewhere. And I know that's paranoid and ridiculous, but part of me is like,
it's not.
I remember in 2016, 2017, advising people who had green cards, be like, you need to watch out, because I've spent a lot of time reporting on Stephen Miller and all these white nationalist groups that influence Miller, VDARE, and all these things. And I was like, they want to get rid of green cards. They want to, and people were like, no, a green card doesn't. You can't do anything. I was like, just don't risk it. And then what happened years later, now we're talking about people with green cards getting deported, right? So I don't know. I just feel like they don't like Mamdani and he's a symbol, and they're just, I know that's not useful for this conversation necessarily, but I just thought about it with New York. What are they going to do when they get in there? That's the first person they're going to get rid of.
You're absolutely right. I was literally talking about this last night with a friend. We were talking about the mayoral race, and we're obviously very excited about Mamdani, and I don't really see who would beat him at this point. So things are looking good, but at the same time, I'm imagining a scenario where election night is the highest high, and then the very next day is, hey, the troops are rolling in. I actually compared it to, if you remember, I believe it was January 5th, 2021, where we won the two elections in Georgia, the two Senate elections, and the Democrats got the majority of the Senate for the first time in a while. And then the very next day, January 6th happened. And it was like a whiplash. And so that is definitely a scenario, I imagine. And, it's not just Trump mobilizing against Mamdani. That's a whole other thing. So there's a lot of people who would like to see New York beat down a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's also he's ideologically an answer to Trumpism in many ways, right? And that's a threat too, on top of his ethnic background and everything else, and the fact that he, there's something sexy about him. I don't mean that in literally oh, he's sexy. I mean
he's not. He's not.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. No, but my point is that there's something going. It's like he's not Obama. In 2007, 2008, he's not that. He's a mayoral candidate, but he's giving people hope and excitement when at a time where Trump is very used to the Democrats just being the Washington Generals to his Harlem Globetrotters, right? They're just there to get their ass kicked, and he's not liking this young whippersnapper.
Yeah, but either is the Democratic Party, right? Like that.
That's what's part of what's giving him so much juice, right? Like, is also that, right?
Right.
Is the fact that he's going against that.
And then you have these candidates popping up in other states too. There's that new Senate candidate in Maine. I'm blanking on his name. That he's like a fisherman or lobster something man, and he's a very populist, progressive, and he's not getting Schumer's backing as of yet. And I think that Schumer is looking for a candidate to run against him. And it's like, imagine if we just embraced all this populist energy and like, I don't know, just see how it plays out. It couldn't be worse than what's happening now. But for some reason, I get the feeling that leadership thinks it is worse, but I guess that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, Marisa, I think you're really right in pointing out the difference between Pritzker and some of these New York politicians. I think that's a really astute observation.
Well, speaking of those other politicians, I wanted to talk a little bit about how Democrats have responded, or perhaps not responded, to what is happening in D.C. Now, Congress is in recess, right? Recess, out of session. I don't know if those are different or the same, but
recess.
they're not there. Capitol Hill's, fairly quiet now. They're not going to be back until next month, but it'll be curious to see if these members, once they are actually there, assuming they ever leave like Navy Yard or Capitol Hill, in between, going back and forth to the office, if that will change their responses at all. I mean, what is kind of the mainstream Democrat response been to this military occupation of DC? Obviously, there's exceptions like my boy J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois. These days, J.B. Pritzker is not a perfect politician by any stretch of the imagination, but it is refreshing to see that, the place I call home is showing like the bare minimum of a back. There's a semblance of, the X-ray machine is at least turned on, and you can assume maybe there's a backbone in there somewhere, but
and there's a fight. There's some fighting spirit. His press conference the other day was I forgot the exact quote, but he was like, come at me and I'll come back, and I think that that's a message that has not been coming across at all, because Democrats aren't really coming back at the current federal administration with any sort of concerted effort, with any sort of unity. They should be like out front in the Capitol, like laying on the freaking ground, like they should be camped out there until like something is changed. Something dramatic needs to happen. And I think they just think that if they put out press releases and, do a TV hit or something, that it's enough. And it's just simply not enough, because it's not breaking through to people. People do not feel like Democrats have this handled at all. So obviously they're not handling it appropriately.
It almost seems like the calculus is that they're just going to lean into being wonky, being like, well, if you look at the polls, they trust us on inflation. If you look at the polls, they think we're more competent leaders. But also, if you look at the polls, there is like no faith in the Democratic Party right now, because it seems to be completely out to lunch, while so many people in this country are scared, not just for themselves, but for their neighbors, for the people they care about in their communities. And people don't know where it's going to stop, right? And it's like, these are supposed to be the leaders of our country. They're supposed to be the ones that kind of put, their skin in the game. And instead, they're just doing whatever the hell else it is they're doing. I don't even know. Town halls, media hits,
Like barely, and the town halls that have happened have not been going well. A lot of Democratic members of Congress who are supportive of Israel have been getting a lot of pushback, have getting a lot of people attending and shouting them down. So these aren't good, productive meetings. And it just like kind of dawned on me, like it kind of blows my mind that even though that they're in recess, that none of them have come back to the district while this is happening. Like it's really easy to hop on a plane or a train from wherever they are and do something. And they're really they're leaving the city high and dry. It's pretty pretty gross when you think about it. It's like the whole city revolves around the Capitol and the government and the people who work there. And then they just peace out for all of August and say, figure it out. And so I think some people will kind of pearl clutch a little bit when they see it in person, but also it's probably not going to be like you said, like right where they live or where they work. They're not going to actually be as exposed to it. And who can say, but I can't imagine like an ICE agent trying to like body slam a member of Congress. But crazier things have happened, I guess.
Never say never.
I watch way more MSNBC than I should. Like it's like a low dose of poison I take every day.
It's a workplace hazard here at Posting Through It.
and I because I want to know. Give me the talking point. Just tell me what the talking points are. And like what I don't understand, and maybe I should write talking points for them. What I don't understand is like, why are they? Everybody, they're kind of like, just, oh, the crime is down, but this is authoritarian. Why don't you just point out that businesses are suffering? I don't understand why that is. They are not screaming that from the rooftops, because we saw like the LGBTQ community in DC said, hey, gay bars are down. It's like 50. It's half or whatever. Because people are scared. They're not on the streets. And then you have just the regular bar traffic way down. Dining is way down. Business owners are hurting because people don't want to go out right now. They feel like they're in a pandemic or something. It's like an unforced pandemic. It's just like just thrown at them. And why aren't they screaming that from the rooftop? Because carjacking is down when there are no cars, like where people don't want to drive out of the house, or like half as many people. It seems like a layup, and they're just not shooting the ball. I don't understand.
If I understood, I would be a gazillionaire, I think. But it's really unfathomable. I just the other day, a DC councilwoman posted online that people shouldn't order DoorDash and delivery, because right now delivery workers are so exposed to being pulled over and hassled and harassed by members of law enforcement. And we've seen so many videos of it. Seen videos of them giving breathalyzer tests to random delivery workers. A video I posted a week or so ago, this delivery driver was just completely ambushed by a crew of ICE agents as people sat by and ate brunch at like a bougie place in Northwest. And it's like, yeah, people don't want to go out to brunch because they might see someone get the shit beat out of them. And so that's not good for business either. So it's just like, it's completely knocked off the entire ecosystem of commerce, of social gatherings. It's just making it a really unpleasant place to live. And I don't know why Democrats are not seizing on that.
So zooming out a bit, you've done a lot of coverage at The Handbasket, which is your independent publication. Honest to God, just force of nature. I am so impressed with what you're doing with The Handbasket, just running laps around these like giant publications. And then not only that, but also your willingness to stand up for yourself and be like, cool story, New York Times. Who wrote about it first? So on The Handbasket, you've written a lot of stories about things that I kind of mentally classify as like in the specter of performative cruelty that the Trump administration has done. It's not entirely performative because they're actually doing shit that's hurting people, right? But performative in the sense of like, does this solve the problem? I don't know, but it gives the vibe of solving the problem to its base. Things like the alligator Alcatraz facility in Florida, everything that's going on with ICE, the Doge cuts to the federal workforce and stuff. And I'm curious, as you look at what's happening now and look back on some of your prior reporting, if you also kind of see these as like storylines in the same cinematic universe.
Yeah, it is very much performative. And with Trump, we know everything is a performance and it's all about optics, and it's creating the appearance of strength, not actually being strong. It's creating the appearance of having a control over things. But at some point, the appearance becomes reality. Because if he is taking over, say, Washington, D.C., like we've been talking about, and people are scared and they think it's not, safe to go there because of this guard presence, like he is kind of manifesting it in a way. So even though he's not achieving these by like traditional means, he is kind of just achieving it by brute force, I guess you could say. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, even earlier on when they were offering the deferred resignation program for federal employees, which meant that they could accept retirement or accept retirement and then still get paid for another bunch of months. At the beginning, it seemed like not that many people were going to take it. It was probably going to be a huge flop, especially when Elon Musk was at the helm of all of this and just like creating many more barriers than helping. But then in the end, you look at the number of people that have actually been eliminated from the federal workforce between deferred resignation and firings, and I believe it's something like 10% of the federal workforce. And so, yeah, we can sit here and laugh at how ridiculous it all is and how Elon Musk, embarrassed himself, but they achieved what they wanted to do. And this is just a few months in. It's a lot of act now, figure out what this means later. And for them, they seem to keep kind of figuring it out somehow.
You mentioned the sort of chaotic nature of the way this was implemented in DC, and almost certainly will be when it's taken to other liberal cities, or the way it was in Los Angeles. We forget about that. It already happened, right? Around the ICE protests. It seems to be like a truism in the public that Trump reacts this way when he feels weak or threatened in some way, right? Where it's like the Epstein scandal started to make a lot of noise, and then he did this, and or Big Balls, got beat up, right? I never thought that would be something I'd have to say, but yeah, I mean, but
That's news analysis now.
it's news. Big Balls got beat up, and I think that embarrassed them too. There's a racial dynamic there, and he's like a sort of little prized little guy that they've tried to protect because the libs were so mad when the people discovered that he was hired in the first place. How is he flying by the seat of his pants, or is this like the things like Alligator Alcatraz, for instance, which is just so gross and obviously authoritarian and creepy and fascistic and whatever other words you want to throw at it? I mean, are these things where it's like, yeah, I'm going to do this, or is he kind of are these just is it authoritarianism by improvisation? Like what is bottom text? Like, what am I saying? I don't know. It's like, where does this stuff come from? Like, is it like we're going to take over DC this late summer? I mean, or are they just like one day they're like just enough? I mean, it's hard for me to know.
Well, it's both, right? Because on one hand, someone could bring an idea to Trump and he's like, oh, cool, sounds great. And he just signs off on it. And there's no larger picture to any of it. Like, for example, I'm working on a story that is hopefully coming out in the next day or two about this member of the U.S. Park Police who's been caught on camera multiple times. In one instance, brutalizing, an innocent person, and then just being generally like kind of a dick around town. And then this week, there was that really creepy cabinet meeting where all the members of the cabinet were kissing Trump's ass. And Doug Burnham, the Interior Secretary who oversees the U.S. Park Police, was like, oh, it's so great. I realized that the Park Police weren't allowed to engage in pursuits, like vehicle pursuits. So I just went to President Trump and I said, can we change that? And in a day, he changed it. And now we're allowed to chase people. And the U.S. Park Police are out there and they're just having so much fun. He literally said that they're having fun pulling people over. And so there's this like very just like malleable, improv way about things. But then on the other hand, there's Project 2025. Like so much of this is laid out before. If more people took that seriously, as you both well know, we may not be in the situation that we're in. So there's a blueprint, and then there's also writing kind of in the margins of the blueprint to be like, what if we added that? What if we added that? I think that's scary because it's methodical and yet unpredictable at the same time.
Sounds like they know what they want to do, but they don't always know how they're going to do it or when. And that's kind of the element of surprise that Trump thrives on. I mean, that's just my analysis of what you're saying.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
that always drove me crazy about the Project 2025 discourse. It was brought up on the campaign trail in 2024. It certainly got a fair share of coverage in mainstream outlets and stuff. But like so much right-wing coverage or right-wing criticism, it kind of focused on the excesses of Project 2025. Weird paragraphs in there about like voting rights or women's rights or whatever that are meant to provoke a reaction. And I guess I get why people do that, right? It's like,
Right.
You're going to talk about this thing that's crazy. Well, and here's the craziest stuff in it. But I feel like so much of that coverage, or maybe it was just, lost in the details or embedded in the subtext, was the bigger project, right? It's like, yes, they have these crazy ideas. There are all kinds of insane people and just truly like legitimately bigoted, hateful people that contributed to, writing up this giant white paper. But the project at its core is a consolidation of power in the executive branch. That is the point of slashing the federal workforce. That is the point of intimidating these cities. That is the point of so much stuff that they're doing, is just directing more power to the White House, specifically the Oval Office, and to political appointees, and away from like career bureaucrats and stuff. That always drove me crazy. I think that was the scariest part of the project, and just who signed on to it. But you did a lot of reporting, speaking of federal agencies, about the DOGE cuts. I mentioned that earlier. I imagine you had, lots of sources and folks inside the government talking to you. This is kind of an aside, but I'm just curious if you talk to people who are still in the government these days and what that's looked like. Because I've seen, the photos and videos of them hanging up giant banners of Trump's face on the building and stuff. It reminds me of like when I was in northern Cyprus, right? And like you just see like all this Turkish government stuff all over the place, or you walk into every store you walk into has like a framed photo of the leader above the doorway and stuff, and just makes me think of that. But I am just curious if you have any sense of like what the vibe is like inside the government these days, now that all of these changes have, kind of come to fruition and things continue to march off on this sort of dystopian direction.
Yeah, well, I definitely have far fewer sources now than I did in February of this year. And that's just a very literal testament to how many people have left the government, especially the people who are frustrated enough to reach out to a reporter about it, I guess. The people that are still there, they're just sort of like, it's just this low grade psychosis at all times. And they are kind of prepared for anything and not really too surprised by anything at this point. I can't speak for all of them, but I get the sense that they have to keep their jobs. They have families to support. They have lives to support. And I know that certain people have it better because of like good supervisors and good managers, and some of these leaders are able to kind of like shield their teams from the worst of what's coming from the top. But at an agency, for example, like FEMA, which I've covered a lot, it's not as large of an agency, and every day is just complete chaos there. They're doing life-saving work. They're working with stuff that is so life or death, and it's being treated like, complete, like fake stuff, like a game of life, a game of Monopoly or something. And so, I don't know. I give so much credit to the people who have stayed, because it's so easy to say from the outside, like, what, everyone should stay, protest and stand up to what's going on. But like, that's not an easy thing to do. And who knows how many sources I'll have left by the end of the year, honestly.
And they're sort of replacing, it seems like if they're not replacing somebody, in literal sense with someone else, it seems like across the government, they're replacing in some way people who are ideologically aligned with MAGA, right? And so that's what the kind of people we're getting. Those are the type of people who are more enthusiastic to be on the streets of DC, to bring it back to the main topic of hand, right? And that's troubling.
And I think that also goes back to what Jared was saying about the most troubling thing about Project 2025 is the more mundane ways in which it's just completely upending the way that governments run. I was reading a story earlier today from Capital B News, which is a great newsroom, and it was about this small town in Louisiana that there was a petroleum plant nearby, I believe, and there was an explosion, and it's just raining down like black sludge onto this town that has like a 90% child poverty rate. And, that's obviously heinous on itself. But then, I'm reading through the whole story. And then, of course, it's like, this seems to be the thing. There always comes a point in every story where it was like, oh, yeah. So the regional head of the EPA who's tasked with cleaning up this town is some guy who used to run stuff in Oklahoma, who wrote a portion of Project 2025 and argued that we need to deregulate everything with air quality and water safety and all the things that are currently hurting this town. So it's like literally the worst person for the job, the most evil possible person. These people are living with very little, and this is a huge source of income from their town, and the plant is currently shut down. And this is the guy that's supposed to help them. And that's just one small town in Louisiana. And so it just shows the absolute insidiousness of all of it, and how, we could cut the head off, metaphorically, of Trump, but it's seeped in so deeply in so many places that you don't even think about.
It's the Onion headline, but a little different. The worst person you know just got a great job.
And there's so many of these guys. I've, weird little guys or whatever you want to call them, these like incompetent middlemen who luck out with these jobs just because they're loyal to the president and have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And our government's basically run by those guys, at least at the kind of second tier leadership level. And that's really scary.
Yeah, it's a government of reply guys, sometimes quite literally, But before we get out of here, before we let you go, Marisa, I wanted to talk about what you're doing with the handbasket. As I mentioned earlier, you've managed to land some pretty big stories and on certain topics run labs around like mainstream news outlets that have hundreds or thousands of employees and all kinds of resources and all kinds of sourcing. What's your secret? No, no. I'm just curious, like, as an independent journalist, sort of how you view the role of independent journalism these days. Especially as these mainstream news outlets, are cutting settlements with the president and getting mushy on covering certain topics. I mean, Mike and I can both attest the far right beat in newsrooms is like virtually incinerated. There's a few people hanging on that are writing these stories at big outlets, and that's great. They're great journalists. I'm not going to put them down. They're probably clinging on for dear life. But it's just like so much of journalism has changed. I'm curious if you think independent journalism is playing a different or perhaps more important role than it has in the past.
I think so, or at least a very different one. It's manifesting differently. I think that there's a huge distrust across the board in big institutions. So whether that's the government or corporate news outlets, people with tons of money and tons of power who, like you said, are willing to settle, who are willing to compromise their beliefs for their bottom line, are not necessarily the people that you want to be hearing from when we're free falling into fascism. And I think the fact that I'm not, bought and sold, I don't have the backing of literally anyone besides my readers, is just, it's a pretty transparent way to see that I'm not answering to anybody aside from those people. And I think also, like, I'm very open about my process. I post too much, but I I try to kind of demystify this process because I think that these large outlets make it seem a lot more complicated than it actually is. It's like you literally just have to find the right people to talk to, have them trust you, earn their trust, get the information in an ethical way, cross some T's, dot some I's, maybe do a quick legal review. And that's a news story, and I guess for me, I don't have to run it by like my corporate sponsors. Like, is this okay? Is this going to like mess up your quarterly report? I don't have to deal with any of that. So I think that the moment just ended up being kind of perfect. I started the handbasket well before this administration, but it's only now that it has really taken off because there seems to be such an appetite for people working outside the system.
I think one issue with independent reporting that I'm sure you feel a lot of pressure because come a certain time of week, you've got people who are donating to your work or to paying for it or whatever. And then, the content, you have to keep the content going, which I think is really sometimes counterintuitive to news. And I'm just curious about that because you do very good kind of the standard newspaper story in the sense like lengthwise. You'll do that and boom, just bang it out. But sometimes it's like the type of investigations that I was able to do when I was with SPLC, and I was given a lot of time and leash, like to do 9 months or 10 months on something. That's really tough. And I'm just curious, like if you feel like you ever want to like stop what you're doing and just like, hey, I need to work on this for 3 months or 4 months. Is that challenging? Because you're getting good information all the time.
It's really challenging, and it's hard to. I'm very hard on myself, and I often feel like, oh my God, I'm letting my subscribers down. I haven't published enough this week. For example, this month I've been traveling a lot, mix of work stuff and a little vacation, and. Yeah, I mean, there's no one to fill in for me. It's
there's no. Yeah, it's like, guys, I need to go on vacation, please. I'm crying here.
Yeah.
Well, Jared and I recently we like doubled our content demand by moving to Patreon. So like we're just gonna run into it head first.
It's a lot. And I am very much of the mind, like, I'm not going to publish something if I don't think it's worth publishing. It's definitely not a volume play for me.
Yeah.
And different independent journalists have different philosophies about that. Like you can talk to someone else and they'll say, just publish, publish, publish. That is the key. And just like get your stuff in front of people. And then my approach, which honestly wasn't even really on purpose, I think it's just my style and maybe I'm not as fast as other people, but I'm like, I'm going to write stuff that I think is important and that matters to me and other people. And I'm setting the expectation that when something drops in your inbox, it's something that means something. I'm not just filling space. I'm not just trying to remind you that I exist. So people know that when they get a handbasket story, like, oh, this should be something that's pretty substantive. And I don't have an editorial calendar. I don't have a set publishing schedule. Those are all things that were told to me that were essential in order to be successful as an independent journalist. And I mean, maybe it's my type B personality or laziness. I don't know.
You don't seem very lazy from I've just met you, but I've only seen you like online before this, but just not the vibe I get.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I would say I'm definitely not type A. that is what I will say. I'm not a hyper organized, just like head down and kind of scatterbrained. And but I figured out a way to make it work for me, which is also the really nice thing about being independent. Like you make your own rules. You make your own schedule. You're not just meeting a quota for the week that, your editor is asking of you. So yeah, I mean, people have asked, like, if you got an offer at one of these big outlets, would you take it? It's a question I get a lot. And at this point, like, no, because I can't be fired tomorrow. And that's a really great feeling.
Yeah. Living the dream, baby. Marisa Kabas, thanks for joining Posting Through It. It's been a pleasure to get to chat with you and get, some of your takes and information about this crazy shit that's happening in DC, potentially coming to a city near us. Hopefully not, but I guess we'll just have to see how the cards fall. Marisa, where can people check out the Handbasket, follow you online, all that good stuff?
So you can check out the Handbasket at thehandbasket.co. And you can find me on Blue Sky at Marisa Kabas, just my full name. Those are the two main places. And yeah, you can become a free subscriber at first, see how you like it, and then upgrade to a paid subscription. All the support is great and helps a lot.
We'll throw links to those down in the episode description so you can go check it out.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Marisa.
I was so glad that Marisa was able to join us. I've really appreciated her reporting, especially this year. It feels like the Handbasket's really taking off. And it was cool that we got to talk to somebody who has been kind of reporting the cutting edge of this stuff, however bleak the topic may be.
I love our guests. We got so many great guests. And we're going to keep producing episodes exactly like this, which is why you, listener, should sign up for our Patreon. The link is in the description. We will be going twice a week going forward. Jared and I are ready to run through walls for you. And yeah, I'm very excited about it, man. I'm really excited. It's mostly because I get to hang out with you. That's the main reason I'm excited.
Yeah, people are saying this is a cash grab and that posting through it is for jocks. No, but your support on Patreon means so much. I mean, we've seen so many people sign up, and we have it. This is the first week we're going to be releasing these bonus episodes, right? So for that many people to sign up to support us and help us do it
without even doing an episode, the premium episode. Yeah, it's kind of amazing, honestly. I got to say, I'm genuinely heartened, and it's tough. My heart is really like covered with scales at this point.
Yeah, it's if I think about it too long, I start to get mushy. But before I get mushy, let's get out of here. Guys, we'll see our Patreon supporters on Thursday, and we'll see the rest of you guys on Monday. Take care.
Bye-bye.